Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Danny. I'm an illustrator with a background in zoology, so I usually draw a lot of animals. Now, when I started this YouTube channel, the plan was to upload a new video every 2 weeks. That seemed like a manageable amount to start with. But just 6 videos in and I've already missed that target. Now, I could offer some excuses like I've been super busy, I've not been very well, I've been out enjoying the sunshine with my family, and all of those are true to a very small degree. But the real reason I didn't make a video last week comes down to the fact that as an illustrator with a channel about my art and my process, making a video also requires making some art, and that's something that I've been struggling with. When I say I've been struggling to make art, you might think I'm talking about artist block, that I just can't face the blank page or I'm just not feeling it, but that's not really my problem. In fact, I've been drawing or painting consistently every day for the last month. My problem is one of focus and a kind of art angst. Let me explain. The biggest number one thing I need to do right now is work on my portfolio. My Etsy shop is ticking along. I'm packing orders and prepping stock for local shops and upcoming markets, but beside that, what I need to spend my time on is creating a consistent body of my very best work to put out there in my portfolio. And it's not that I'm stuck for ideas. I've got lots of ideas. I have pages full of thumbnail sketches ready to be worked into finished pieces. My problem is one of execution and the anxiety that comes with making choices. Say, for example, I want to create a picture of a bear catching salmon in a river. I've sketched plenty of bears, I've watched the live streams of grizzlies in Brooks River, and I've figured out the composition I want. I even have a sense of the vibe I want from this picture. It's a dramatic moment, but I still want it to be somehow soft and full of muted colours and textures and things that I love. And a little disclaimer here, I don't think I've ever created a picture that matched up to the idea I had in my head. Anyway, all I have to do is sit down and finish the painting. And that's the bit that my brain just can't handle, because there are so many options. Should I paint this bear in my usual watercolour style with fine pen lines? That works well for animals that are isolated from their background. How would it translate across a full spread in a piece full of movement? Should I use Procreate, layer up scans of paper textures in the way that I've done before? Perhaps I should use graphite to capture all the details of the fur and just add hints of colour on the fish. And recently I've really been enjoying coloured pencils in my sketchbook. What would they look like if I scaled them up to a full image? Now, I've deliberately avoided using the word style here. A lot of artists and illustrators worry about finding their style, and I feel that in some ways that's a whole other topic. Whether I drew the bears in graphite or gouache, colour or grayscale, it would still have something of my style in it. It would look like a bear that I drew because it would be the result of the years I've spent drawing and the way I hold a pen or pencil, and there are limitations to the way that I can draw bears. What I'm talking about is not so much style as technique, the combinations of materials I choose and the workflow I use. And that's the problem. I can't choose. Besides the basic sort of staying alive and processing the world stuff that my brain does, right now about 70% of its time is spent thinking about this, agonising over art supplies and the best way to finish the job. The other 30%, that's spent on things like saying hello to dogs and deciding what to eat and agonising over choosing the best notebook. And I realise that in the time I've been stressing about this and weighing up the pros and cons of each technique and flip-flopping over absolute definite final decisions, I could have illustrated a whole book about bears, twice over, one in Procreate and one in graphite. Or maybe watercolours. Or collage. So this is why I didn't make a YouTube video last week. I fully intended to film one about creating ducks in digital watercolour brushes, but when it came down to it, I just wasn't sure that I wanted to make the ducks that way. And in the end, I spent most of the week throwing every combination of materials I could at my sketchbooks and not actually getting anything done. Now, don't get me wrong, experimenting in sketchbooks and trying new things and new materials is really important. It's how we develop as artists. But I think there comes a point, for me at least, where I have to just Find some kind of focus. I know that really what I'm doing here is procrastinating, because looking at 10 different types of ceramic palette on Jackson's art is fun, and because if I actually sit down to draw the bear, there's a very strong chance I'll stuff it up. Am I obsessing over things that don't matter and finding problems that don't exist? Yes, absolutely. I'm well aware of that. I think it's absolutely possible for a portfolio to contain pictures rendered in various techniques using different materials, as long as they're not wildly different and there's some sort of consistency or quality to the work, so that art directors or anyone else who's looking to employ your services can understand what they're going to be getting. Having that sort of variety in a portfolio is fine. So I should just make the finished pictures. Maybe today I'll draw my bears in graphite, and next week I'll work on some birds in watercolour, and maybe they'll both be good enough. But my brain doesn't work like that. My brain is a chaotic place. It's like a web browser with 30 tabs open at once. In order to get anything done, I need routine and I need a plan, so that when I decide I want to draw a cute little beagle, I can just crack on. I know exactly what tools I need to pick up, and the only decisions I have to make are ones of colour or composition. I don't want to spend hours drawing or painting a dog, only to wonder when it's finished what it would look like if I'd used nothing but coloured pencils instead, or perhaps graphite, or maybe a combination of everything. And I can promise that that is exactly what happens when I do finish a picture. I have plenty of finished pieces that I've redrawn and worked again and again in different ways. So I need a plan, and for the purposes of accountability, I'm going to share my plan with you now. Strap in. I'm going to set myself a 30-day project, which is a slightly arbitrary number as we're already most of the way through the month, but 30 sounds good, and 30 days is kind of a big deal for me. I'm notoriously bad at completing things like Instagram challenges because, well, my brain's got all these other tabs open. So, 30 days of drawing every day, which I've been doing anyway, but now I'm going to set strict parameters. I'm only going to draw in Procreate. I'm going to limit the size of the canvas to A5 so that even if I start zooming in too much and getting caught up in pixel level details, I can still get it finished. You might have noticed in this video that I have a habit of erasing half the marks I make only to put them in again, so I need to limit the size of the picture. I'm not going to experiment with a million different brushes. I'm just going to stick to the ones I know and work in the way that I usually do in Procreate. And I'm only going to draw dogs. These have always been my go-to subject, so I can draw them without thinking too much about what they look like. I'm also not going to worry about things like composition, environments, emotion or story, or any of the things that I'd want to see in my portfolio. This is just about improving my rendering and finding a workflow and focus. If I get my Procreate dog finished and I have time, I might play in my sketchbook with some other materials, but that will just be for fun. I want to separate that from the focused, intentional drawing practice. Maybe at the end of 30 days, I'll decide I want to repeat the exercise with different materials, or perhaps I'll have entered some Zen-like state with Procreate, where I can move on to incorporating those other things like putting my dogs in a scene or adding other characters. Maybe I'll be ready to draw that bear with his salmon. If you want to see how I get on with this challenge, I'll be posting the images to Instagram every day, and I'll be back here with an update. In the meantime, maybe next week, I'll make that video about the ducks.